topic is how to show up in a sincere and authentic way and be genuine. In our work as executive coaches, we're often pushing people outside of their comfort zone or their preferred way of behaving because it's going to be more effective. Okay? And often I hear, Rick, if I behave that way, it's just not going to be me. And so the dilemma is, how do you show up in a sincere and authentic way because it's a little uncomfortable for you, but still needs to be genuine. And you need to do this. You need to behave outside this comfort zone because it is going to be more effective. So Liz, I'm curious, from your perspective, how do you engage clients around this issue of being outside their comfort zone and still showing up in a sincere and authentic way for them?
Well, I think there are a few things that can be helpful in this regard. So I think the beginning of this discussion is making sure that there is self-awareness, not only around who that individual is, what their core values are, what's meaningful to them, how they like to present themselves, how they want to brand themselves as a leader within their organization. And so self-reflection on that is very important. And also getting a sense of how are others viewing them. So there may be ways in which the person is seeing him or herself that's very different from how they're showing up in front of other people. Someone might say, well, you know, I'm a change agent, and so my job is to shake things up. And I don't care if I, throw bodies under the bus along the way. My job is to get it done. And others might say, well, this person is a train wreck and nobody wants to be near her, and she, creates chaos wherever she goes and alienates people. In which case, in fact, she's not being a very effective change agent at all. So I think to help my clients really get a good sense, and I have them sometimes do a kind of a write your own 360 exercise, where I say, see yourself as if you were an external stakeholder and rate yourself in terms of communication effectiveness, dealing with conflict, managing change, leading your team, working with external stakeholders, and so on and so on. And then I collect feedback from stakeholders, that know them in a variety of ways, in a variety of capacities, and we look at these two side by side. So you're seeing yourself this way, this other individual is seeing you, or this other collection of individuals is seeing you very differently. Let's try and make sense of what that's all about. Once we do that, we're in a very good position to figure out, are you in fact presenting yourself in the way that you think you are? Are you as efficient and effective at presenting who you are to the outside world? And if not, what can we do to make you, a little bit better at what you're doing? It doesn't mean you have to have more skills or more experiences or you have to go travel to Taiwan. It means, how do you do the things, the soft skills, the more subtle things that help you both be true to who you are and at the same time be really able to be impactful and effective at the work you do.
Yeah, okay, great. So let's take a simple example of someone who's introverted.
Yes.
Okay, by nature. They're initially quiet, reflective, and that's how they show up in one-on-one conversations, that's how they show up in group meetings. And it's going to be important for them to speak up earlier in a conversation and be heard, have a voice, right? So in an example like that, how do you engage an introvert, and what suggestions, techniques might they employ to be sincere and authentic and still outside of their comfort zone?
It's a great question, because it's not only a rhetorical, it's actually something that many of my clients struggle with all the time. It's not an unusual situation, particularly with folks who are very good technically, whether they are scientists or IT professionals, who perhaps are a bit more analytical, maybe are more comfortable with data and numbers sometimes than they are with, being very assertive in their communication and engaging with others in that way. So it's a very real dilemma. And I guess what I often will tell them is to think about what are the ways in which they can go into a meeting or a conversation or even a networking event prepared enough that they feel a bit more comfortable. So their natural inclination is maybe to be a little bit more shy and withdrawn, but if they are better prepared and have some dialogue ready to go, that, you know, they still can be who they are. They're not faking anything. They're not walking in and putting a lampshade on their head. But they're just pushing a little bit and creating a little more comfort level in doing so. I'll also tell them to look for the key opportunities, so they don't have to be the person who speaks up, you know, 4, 5, 6 times in a group meeting. But to maybe find that one place where what they have to say really is going to add value and let their voice be heard. And sometimes that's all it takes. And as people do this, they become more comfortable, they feel some level of success, and it actually starts to integrate into their self-concept. Yes, I'm an analytical person, I'm a little bit of a shyer guy. However, I can make my voice heard at key times, and I can be responded to by others in a way that's very reinforcing.
Yeah, great. So I heard you say 2 important things there. One is thinking in advance and doing some planning in advance of a meeting, and perhaps showing up, and really thinking about maybe one spot, you know, one
Yes.
place where you can be heard, where you normally wouldn't say anything, and time to speak up, right?
Yes.
Even though it might not be your natural inclination at that point, to make a conscious effort to show up in that way.
Yes.
And the examples I use is sort of like a time in your life when you were very little, maybe you had didn't know how to tie your shoe, and then you were first learning how to tie your shoe. It was a little uncomfortable, a little out of your comfort zone. What was the behavior you learned and have long since mastered?
Yes.
Riding a bike is similar, driving a car at different points in your life. And at times these are uncomfortable and well within your portfolio of behavior now. And so in our work, it's really important for us to push people to places that are going to be important for them, okay?
Yes.
And communication is a big one that I found in terms of speaking up and being heard, okay? What about the person who says, that's just not me? You know, I just wouldn't, you know, it's just not me. What do you do in those situations, Liz?
Well, I think we have to really make sense of, is that a defensive behavior? Well, that's not me, could mean I just feel incredibly uncomfortable doing that. Or that just falls without, I have no experience doing that. It's so uncomfortable that I just refuse to go there. And if that's the case, you know, we need to work with that, because that may be the person actually inhibiting their own ability to be successful because of their discomfort. There are times that it's just not me means it's just not that person. So it might mean that they have to get good enough at something that they don't derail themselves. If somebody is painfully shy speaking in front of a group, well, there are very few people who never have to present in front of a group. So maybe they can get good enough at it to get by, but they don't take on a role where it's something they have to do all the time, because maybe it's just not them. You know, we do need to play to our strengths. We do need to know who we are internally, what's important to us, what feels right to us, and so there is some real relevance to finding that right match. More often than not, though, it's just not me is a bit of a defensive reaction to, oh my God, that seems scary, I don't think I can do it.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I make the distinction of, you know, being uncomfortable and still safe. Because quite often, you know, we need the safe environment when we're trying something new for the first time. So it can be uncomfortable, but there's a way that there's minimal downside associated with trying this new behavior. So looking for an area where we can test out a new behavior, even though it might be uncomfortable, so we can develop the way we would say that. Right?
Yes.
You know, as we're showing up differently, what are the words that come out of our mouth? How do we carry our body? What do we say in that moment?
Yes.
So that, okay, I did that. It was different, felt funny, a little uncomfortable, but you know, it actually worked. You know, or I got a better result. And that's the important piece, right? Is we're putting people in uncomfortable places purposefully so that they can be more effective, right?
Yes.
So we can expand their range of behavioral options available to them as they're thinking about how to show up in a particular moment.
Yes, and so I think that the two things I grab out of that are, one, a little bit of feel the fear and do it anyway. And it's probably not going to be nearly as scary as the anticipation would have you think. And practicing in a safe environment. So sometimes I'll tell people, try this out at home. Tell your friends and family, listen, I'm going to try doing something a little bit different from how I typically do it. Bear with me. Maybe give me a little feedback on how effectively I do it, or if I could do things a little bit differently from how I am today. Look in the mirror. I mean, that's the safest way ever, right? Record yourself. Put yourself in front of a camera. practice, whether it's speaking up in a certain way or creating more eye contact or listening a little bit better or whatever it might be, create a scenario and watch yourself doing it. And then you become your own audience, and it does make it much easier and more comfortable over time.
I love that the fear piece, right? Be able to face your fears and
Yes.
embrace that.
Yes.
And I love those techniques. There's no substitute for practicing and rehearsing in those environments. So
Yes.
really appreciate you sharing that today, Liz.
That's
And,
my pleasure.
great, and thanks so much for listening in today, and really appreciate you taking the opportunity, and we would encourage you to be in an uncomfortable and safe place, to test out new behaviors that might be outside of your comfort zone that will actually help you be more effective. Thanks so much.